now the chain rule and the quotient rule. All right, so the chain rule and the quotient. You could change this to the chain rule times the product, but I'm going to leave it because negative exponent students typically struggle simplifying that. So I'm going to use the chain rule and the quotient rule. It's the quotient rule because I've got the fraction, right, the quotient, the 3x plus 1 divided by 2x minus 5, 2 minus x raised to the 5th, which that's where the chain rule is going to come in. All right, this is my high function. This is my low function, which the low function's the one that's going to require my chain rule. All right, so the quotient rule. It's the low as is, 2 minus x to the 5th, times the derivative of the high, which is just 3, minus the high. And make sure you put parentheses because that negative is outside of that group. Times the derivative of the low, which this is where the chain rule comes into play. Alright, so the low function is the chain rule. I've got to pull my power 5 out, times my group raised to 1 degree less, so 2 minus x raised to 4 degrees. Not done yet. Don't forget the derivative of the inside, which it's important because it's a negative 1. Alright, derivative of the 2 minus x is negative 1. All over that low function, whole thing squared. Alright, now the simplification of this. So this is going to simplify to 10 because when I take a power raised to a power, I multiply, so it's going to be a 10. Don't cancel anything yet, because I have to actually factor to cancel. Alright, so I'm going to simplify that, and then to simplify, we're going to factor out the common group. Alright, again, it's the one I took the chain rule on. That's always going to happen. Right, the common group. Right, I've got two terms there. I've got this first term, 2 minus x to the 5th times 3, and I've got the more complicated second term. But in that second term, I've got the 2 minus x to the 4th. And so I can factor out the group 2 minus x. And I can factor out 4 of them from my numerator. Alright, so it's still all up in the numerator. Before I get started, I'm going to rewrite my denominator so I don't forget, and it's raised to the 10, because 5 raised to the second, I multiply that, and I get 10 of those down there now. Alright, so I'm going to factor out my common group 2 minus x, and I can factor out 4 of those, because I only have 4 in my second term. Alright, then it's times, so it's times now what's left over. Alright, so what's left over? Well, in the first term, I had a group left over, right, because I only pulled 4 of that out, and I had the 3 left over. Right, I'm going to go ahead and multiply this negative 1 times this negative 1 to make this a positive. Right, so it's a plus now. Right, what's left over? Well, those 4 are gone, but I still had the group 3x plus 1, and I still have the constant 5 in there. Right, so again, there's a plus now because I took this negative times this negative to get the positive. The brackets means I still have to clean up the inside stuff. I still have to clean up inside, which means I'm going to distribute my 3, distribute my 5, and collect like terms. And then, now I can simplify. Right? The difference between the first expression and the second is now I've got multiplication of the entire group. Got this entire group times that. And so I can reduce those 4 can reduce with 4 of those, which means those will simplify to 6, and that'll be gone. Reduced because it's equal to 1. Alright, so I'm doing 2 things in the simplification. I'm reducing those 4 with 4 of those in the denominator, and then up top I'm distributing. And since those are gone now, I don't really need my bracket, so I'm going to drop them. So I'm going to, this is gone, distribute my 3, so I get a 6 minus 3x, distribute my 5, so I get a 15x plus 5. All over now, 2 minus x, but only 6 of them, because I cancel out 4 of them. Alright, then my last step, up top, my bottom stays the same. I collect like terms, so I can add my x terms to get 12x, and my 5 and 6 gives me 11, so 12x plus 11 is what it simplifies to, and then I'm done. That's as simplified as she gets. So again, the hard part about this one a lot of times is not just the rule, it's the simplifying. Alright, so again, I'm just going to do this one example and stop there, and then I'll pick up the example, the next one in the next video, because like I said, students like to come back and watch these more than once.